Hi, friends. Welcome to Core Light Spiritual Weather Report. It is September 22nd, 2024. This is Brad, and it's just such a joy and a pleasure to be with you again. The last Spiritual Weather Report was in July, and it just feels like, I don't know, lifetimes. So I'm sorry I had to cancel the August Spiritual Weather Report, but I came down with a flu and it just was not possible to do it. So now I'm just amazed at how the world has changed so much in just 2 months and how much the energies continue to accelerate. I bet you're feeling it as well. So thank you for tuning in today, and also if you're tuning in the future, thank you. I'm calling in today from Santa Fe, New Mexico in the United States. Actually, I'm in the countryside just outside Santa Fe. It's just so incredibly calm and peaceful out here in what we call the high desert. It's a very high altitude, but it's still desert. So there's this vast quality and a kind of stark beauty to the land. And there's this very mystical quality about being here. They call New Mexico the land of enchantment. And it's an area that draws a lot of people who are on a spiritual path and also artists. And so there are many people here of like mind and free-spirited. And Leslie and I lived here for almost 25 years. So I'm grateful to be able to come back, for a short time each year to revisit. It holds a very special place in my heart. And I hope you can feel some of this mystical energy of the high desert of New Mexico coming through my voice and in the energy today. I'd be very happy to share it with you. And today is the equinox. So happy equinox to everybody who's here live today. And in fact, it was exact. The equinox was exact just a couple of hours or so ago. So we're in this power moment right now. And if you are listening to this in the future, then it's also live for you whenever you're listening. So happy equinox to you too. And we're going to talk today about the energies of the equinox. And they do last for several days, even up to a week or so. So it's not just today. So we can all take advantage of these energies. So before we begin our session today, I would like to welcome everybody who's new to Core Light, and I also welcome all of our old friends too. For those who are new, every month I tune in on what's happening in the collective consciousness, and I'm always shown a few key themes to talk about on these calls. Today, there are 7 themes, and I'm going to list them right now. The first is balance, equality, and peace. The second is there a battle for the earth, or is it a dance? The next one is forces of separation and darkness versus forces of connection and light. The next one is fear-clearing practices. The next one is freedom at stake. And the next one is practices to preserve freedom. And the last one is enjoy the popcorn. That was kind of a funny one that came through, so I'll look forward to talking about that at the end of the call. For anybody who's new to these Spiritual Weather Report calls, I start by offering a guided meditation, and then I speak about the prevailing energies that are affecting us and also about the spiritual principles that are most helpful for us right now. And then we'll have time for questions and answers. And we'll close the session with a brief guided meditation or prayer or whatever we have time for. And if you need to leave before the call ends, you can always listen to the recording later. We do send out the link to our email list, and it's also posted on YouTube. Before we start the guided meditation, there are just a few little updates I'd like to give you. In August, we were very, very happy to launch the audiobook of Leslie's and my book, Returning to Oneness, 8 Keys of Ascension. It's been a long time coming, and it finally happened in August, and the audiobook comes with a very special new extended guided meditation. It's all of the guided meditations from the end of each chapter strung together into one long meditation and walking you through all 8 keys in one sitting. And it's got beautiful music in the background. And I read the book and I do the guided meditation myself. So for now, the audiobook is only available at corelight.org. And we're planning to put it on Amazon and Audible at some point, and we'll keep you posted when that happens. So another little update is that soon we plan to launch one of Leslie's best courses that she ever did, and we've been busy editing it and revamping it. It's called The 7 Portals of Spiritual Awakening. It should be ready by the end of this year or early next year, and I'll be offering some live Zoom Q&A calls with that course, so you can stay tuned for that. We'll let you know by email, and I'll announce it on these weather reports as well when it's ready. The next update. For about the past year or so, I've been working on a project of turning Leslie's and my book, The Marriage of Spirit, into a video series for social media. And we're planning to go into production very soon. And the plan is to have at least a couple of videos ready to show you in the first half of 2025. And I'm super excited about this. It's been a vision that I've held for decades. And so it's been so much fun and such a creative process to finally start to bring it into form. I'm really looking forward to sharing it with you as soon as it's ready, and I'll keep you posted on that. Lastly, I'm also getting really excited about plans to offer some in-person events next year in the U.S., most likely. It's just been a very, very long time since we've had live in-person events. I'm not sure where exactly yet, where in the U.S. or wherever in the world, or when they'll be, but I will keep you posted as soon as I figure that out, as soon as I get the guidance. But I can feel they're coming, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you face to face again, eye to eye, so we can have a hug. There's nothing like that. Zoom is wonderful, and this format, a virtual format is wonderful, but there's nothing like in person. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with our guided meditation. We have a lot to talk about today, so I'm going to keep the guided meditation just a little brief. But I invite you now to please close your eyes and get comfortable, either lying down or sitting in your chair, and take a few long, slow, deep breaths. Breathing in the light. Breathing out any tension in the body. Breathing in peace. And breathing out stress. And breathing in this beautiful present moment. And breathing out any concerns about the past or the future. Just being right here, right now. Surrendering to your spiritual path, giving yourself the gift of this precious moment, the gift of the present. Just breathing and relaxing and letting go. The relaxation is so important, and we forget that sometimes. We forget to just stop and relax and be quiet, still the mind. The physical relaxation is the foundation for the enlightening of our consciousness. Everything builds on the deep relaxation of the body and the stillness of the mind. So now I invite you to just continue to breathe and relax and let go. And I invite you to do a scan of the body from head to toes and fingertips. Just feeling a beautiful warm wave of energy passing through you, melting away any tension in the muscles. Just like a warm knife through butter. Just easily feeling the tension in the muscles melting away. dissolving all the stress and the tension in the body. And let's take a few long, slow, deep breaths, breathing light in through the top of the head and breathing it out the fingertips. Breathing more light in through the top of the head and breathing it all the way down to the toes, exhaling light out your tips of your toes. Breathing light in through the top of the head and breathing it out the root chakra, which is at the base of the spine. Feeling with the exhale, feeling the energy going down into Mother Earth and connecting with the core of the earth. Commingling your energy with the earth energy, and then drawing it back up into your body, up through the soles of your feet and up your legs, all the way up the torso, up and out the top of the head again, out into the celestial realms. And send the energy up to a source of universal energy. And that might look different for each person. It might be a group of heavenly beings, a spiritual guide or an angel. It might be a spiral galaxy or a star. Just connect with your source of universal energy, the highest form of light that is connected to your soul, and draw that beautiful, luminous, universal energy, your soul energy, down into your body, filling you up from head to toes. Just feeling every cell of your body, soaking it up. Trillions of cells like little miniature sponges, soaking up the light from your source, filling up this beautiful body that you get to wear for a few years on planet Earth. As you fill up with light and as you deeply relax into the embrace of Mother Earth beneath you, I'm going to say a little prayer and an invocation for our call today. We call on the Great Spirit, Divine Mother, Father God, the Self that we all are. We call on all of our highest spiritual guides, teachers, angels, all the beings who surround us in the highest love and light. We invite you all into this sacred space with us today. And also, if you're listening in the future, it's still present time for you. There is no time and space at this level. So we're all one. We are all in the present moment, no matter what linear time you're listening to this. And we ask our guides to wrap us all up in a beautiful cocoon of golden white light and love and healing energy. We ask that you guide our conversation today into the highest love and the highest wisdom, and hold our hands as we walk out into the world, into our soul's highest purpose. We offer ourselves as instruments of peace, and we ask for peace in this world and an end to war, no matter where it is. And we ask for protection and courage and inspiration to all those who are working for universal peace on our planet. And we offer a special blessing right now to the whole of the natural world. And we give thanks for this opportunity to be in these beautiful bodies at this most extraordinary time in human evolution on planet Earth, our beautiful blue planet. We are so, so grateful for the opportunity and also to be here together right now, sharing this field of love. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Alalaho. Isn't it wonderful? That's what that means in Tibetan. And when you feel ready, please slowly bring your awareness back into the room and into your body. Slowly beginning to stretch. And when you feel ready, open your eyes, coming fully back into your body. Oh, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for participating in the field of love. I love those meditations, even though we're not in the same room. I can feel you, and I hope you can feel the field of love that we all generate together. It's so beautiful. So I thank you for that. Our first topic for today is balance, equality, and peace. We're in the midst of two very auspicious power days. Yesterday was World Peace Day. I don't know if you know that, but it's a very special day. And today is the equinox, as I said. So the energies of balance and equality and peace are with us right now. And it's a great time to call them into your life, ask for their support, bring them in, anchor them in the body, in your world. There's also a lot of intensity in the astrology. We're in a series of eclipses and super full moons, and there's been this extraordinary amount of solar flare activity, the most in over 20 years. My friend Stephanie Austin, the astrologer, wrote about the solar flares in her recent eco-astrology report, and I want to read it to you. It's just a couple of sentences. She's talking about solar flares. She says, these massive bursts of light and energy not only impact power grids, GPS, and satellite communications, but also affect our cardiovascular and nervous systems, pineal gland, and DNA. Feeling unusually tired, wired, and or discombobulated are common responses to these evolutionary upgrades. Extra rest, hydration, salt baths, and time in nature help ease the integration process. So I wanted to read that to you because I have felt over the last month especially such intensity in the energy. And some days it's sort of just weird. It's like I don't understand what's going on in my body. I feel these weird energies passing through, and there can be very intense outpicturings in other people and in the world, pardon me, in general. So I wonder if you've felt that too, and this could explain part of it, the astrology and these solar flares, which have been sort of off the charts, as I understand. I didn't read her whole report, but she talks about just how intense they've been. And also, speaking of Stephanie Austin and the astrology, I just wanted to remind everybody that Stephanie was our guest speaker on the January Spiritual Weather Report call, and the theme for this year, if you recall, was exponential change. So if you're experiencing big changes in your life, you're right on track. And we still have more than 3 months to go before the end of the year. So more change coming, no doubt. I know that I'm feeling it in my life, and it feels like there are significant collective changes ahead for us as well. No big surprise there, I'm sure, to most people. As I was talking about, yesterday was World Peace Day, and I know that there's very little peace in the wider world right now with the wars that are raging out of control, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. So I guess it's a good reminder for all of us to pray for peace in the world, and also to focus on developing peace within ourselves. Developing our own personal inner peace is one of the greatest gifts we can give the world, especially at a time like this when it's so intense and when there's so much war. And as I mentioned, today is the equinox. The exact moment of the equinox was just a couple of hours or so ago. And as you probably all know, the equinox is the moment when summer turns into fall in the northern hemisphere and when winter turns into spring in the southern hemisphere. And it's when night and day are equal. So it's a time when balance and equality are available to us. And it's also marking the pivoting of the cycles because of the turning of the seasons. And so that energy of cyclical change is also available to us. And it's a great time to do ceremony in order to harness these energies, or do something, anything, to mark the occasion of a cycle changing in your life, even if it's just for a minute, sitting down to a simple prayer or a meditation. It's just that there's a lot of power in doing something, whether it's a formal ceremony that takes more time or something just brief on your own. So even if you're listening to this recording later, these energies do stay with us, as I mentioned, for a few days or even a week or so you can still take advantage of this moment, this powerful moment. I know many people whose lives are in some kind of transition, including my own. Some of us are in major change, some of us are having minor change, but most people are going through some kind of significant change. And if you haven't had a moment to think about this, it's a great opportunity to take time to examine your life. And I will bet that if you do that, you'll see that you're in some kind of ending of an old cycle and the beginning of a new one. Even if the new phase hasn't really revealed itself yet to you, if you can't see what it is, you should know that it's there waiting for you. It's around the corner, and it's a great time to remember that when one door closes, another door opens. And even if you can't see that new door opening yet, it is opening, and this is just a metaphysical law. It's just, I think I'm speaking about it just because sometimes we get so caught up in the challenging emotions around doors closing in our lives that we forget to look for the new door opening. So we need to remember to look for it. And it's especially important to remember that whatever is waiting on the other side of that new door opening, it's going to be even better than what we had before. And personally, I've been experiencing this myself. And it's been a great opportunity for me to practice walking my talk. For me, it has come in the form of what felt like a betrayal by some people that I know well. And it felt like an ending of something that was very important to me. And so I got to practice jumping right into the witness and saying to myself, oh, wait a minute. This feels like betrayal. Aha! And oh, right, this feels like victimization. And so I had to laugh at myself. It took hold of me for a minute, and I got to watch all the associated emotions rising up and feeling the shock and the shattering, feeling sad and anger and fear and all the rest. And so just witnessing all of that and letting it pass through me, letting it all go. And so it's been this great, we call an FGO. I think you might have heard me talk about FGOs, frickin' growth opportunities. It doesn't feel good at all, but it is a really great opportunity to strengthen the witness, to transcend victim-tyrant consciousness, and remember that there's something even better ahead, like I was talking about. It's about remembering that life is always being done for us, not to us. We're not victims. And that's really the bottom line. We're not victims. There's always a perfection to every situation, even when it doesn't look like it. And how do we know that? How do we know it's perfect? Because it happened that way. And I know sometimes it takes a little while to really get that. I mean, I don't mean to make light of difficult situations. When we go through pain around, loss, or if we're grieving or whatever it is, it sure does not seem like it's perfect at all. But ultimately, that's the truth of it. That's where it's so helpful to be on a conscious spiritual path and to have some practices, some tools that can help us come out the other side of difficult situations. And I know most of you listening to this already know that. So if you're going through a really challenging time of it, this is a good time to take advantage of the prevailing energies I was talking about, the balance, the equality, and the peace that's available to us, and to focus on this higher perspective from the place of the witness. If you're not going through any significant change at the moment, then you can just consider yourself blessed. Doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. You're just one of the few that are getting a break right now. I'd actually be surprised if anybody listening to this falls in that category, but I suppose it's possible. And so whether you are or you're not experiencing some significant change in your personal life, we can all see that there's major change happening in the collective right now. So I think this is a good time to shift gears, and let's talk about that next. The next topic on the list is the great battle for Earth, or is it a dance? And this theme was super clear to talk about today. It came in a little bit like a flashing neon sign. It was undeniable. I was like, I didn't really want to talk about that, but I kept getting, pushed into it. So I think it's up for many reasons, but especially because of the upcoming U.S. presidential elections. It just feels like there's a lot at stake in the 3D physical world, 3D meaning third dimensional physical world, around whatever's coming. And it does feel like a battle zone. And I'll bet you if you're here in the United States with me, you're feeling what I'm feeling. And many people are stressed, right? And confused and afraid. And those are the energies that I'm feeling here in the U.S. in the collective. I was just in the U.K. for about 3 months not long ago, and that was all there in the collective there too. So I get the sense that it's similar in most countries. So to everybody who's not in the U.S., even though we're going to be talking about the U.S. today because of the presidential election and other things, I'm hoping that you can relate to this discussion and that it's helpful to you too. I also think because America has such an influential role in global life that hopefully it'll be helpful to talk about it at least for everybody. I wonder if there's any place on the earth where this is not the case. I do think it's ubiquitous. I don't think there's anywhere you can go to escape the shadow right now. Every country has a slightly different flavor of shadow. It's not the same everywhere, but this is a global FGO. We're all sharing. Isn't it fun? Isn't it wonderful? So anyway, before I go any further with this discussion, I need to preface what I'm going to say with a few disclaimers, let's call them. So first, I think we can all acknowledge that talking about what's happening in the world, especially around politics, it's a bit of a minefield. I know you know what I mean. Nowadays, the world is so divided that when you talk about almost anything that feels important, you risk offending half the people. So I need to, right here, right up front, I just need to send up a big red flag in advance, and just to be clear that I'm not advocating for any political party, any political leader, anything remotely like that. This is not about taking sides in politics. I like to look at things from a metaphysical perspective and search for the truth, and to find the many shades of gray in between the black and the white. So please, I'm asking you, please don't interpret anything that I might say by thinking that I'm supporting a party or a candidate or whatever. I am not. I'm just feeling guided to talk about some of this in the hopes that it might be supportive for our evolution and our spiritual growth. Second, I invite everybody right now to consciously bring in your witness. Just invite in your witness self right now. And remember that if you get stirred up around any of this conversation, just remember to breathe and relax as much as you can. The witness is our objective observer, and it's that part of us that remembers that we're not our emotions. We're pure awareness. Our emotions are passing through us, and that witness part of us practices feeling the emotions, naming the emotions, letting them go. So if you do get stirred up during the conversation today, I invite you to remember this, remember the witness, and I invite you to visualize yourself like in the eye of a storm, right? With the emotions and the mental debris and whatever it is, all swirling around you. But you remain in the center. You remain unaffected, unattached, balanced. And I invite you to remember that centered, balanced part of you that's who you truly are. That's the witness self. It's the non-judgmental, calm, peaceful part of yourself. So you can identify with that part of you while you observe the storm of all the thoughts and the emotions swirling around you. And I know most of you know that, but that's just a little reminder. So, third, I invite us all to take a spiritual perspective on what's happening in the 3D, in the third dimensional physical reality. So, from our witness perspective, we remember that we're not these bodies anyway. We are souls having a temporary human experience. And one day, we drop these bodies like slipping off an overcoat, and we return to Source in our light body. And that's the ultimate truth. So remembering that is really important as well. And also from the witness perspective, we can remember that at one level of reality, this world is actually an illusion. If that's what the enlightened masters throughout the ages have told us, we're living in a dream world, is what they say. And now quantum physics is catching up with that. The spiritual wisdom and quantum physics are merging. Quantum physics tells us that physical reality is actually made up of 99% space, 99.999% space. And, our minds take that in and we think, well, how can that possibly be? I mean, everything in this world seems so solid and so real. These bodies seem so real, and the table and the chair seem so real. But quantum physics tells us nothing is what it appears to be. And that's exactly what the mystics through the ages have said as well. So I think it's really important that we remember that we're here as souls in schoolroom earth to have experiences, to learn lessons, and that all the dramas that are playing out on the world stage are are part of this dream reality. And at one level of reality, none of it's real. It's just theater, right? It's all just a movie so that we can have our experiences, learn our lessons, evolve in consciousness. But at that other level, it just seems so real. And I suppose you could say that it is real from that perspective, from the 3D perspective, because when you're in it, when you're in the separation, when you're in the duality, it's real. And so from that level, it does look like we're in this great battle for Earth, right? And it's messy and it's intense and it can be scary. And so that's why I felt like it was important to just talk about it a little bit today. And so for our discussion, I want to invite you to view things from that spiritual perspective and remember that from that level, none of this is real. It's all a movie. It's perfect. Perfect storm, right? Even though it looks like a mess and it's scary. But in reality, it's all designed for our soul evolution. And from that level, it's more like a dance than a battle. And it's this eternal dance of light and dark. And I think we'll probably talk more about that later on as well. So for now, for that being said, let's go ahead with our discussion about this supposed great battle for Earth and the dance of light and dark. One way to view it is as forces of separation and darkness versus forces of connection and light. So I think the first thing to name here is that there's so much war energy on the planet right now. The forces of separation are really pushing war, and it's as though some of our leaders are actually trying to make World War III happen. And it's absolutely insane what's going on. And so, of course, that's going to feel scary. And if you track almost any news source, you've probably been hearing that we've been teetering on the edge of what they're calling World War III, and that it could involve nukes. And that's especially scary. And it's not just wars between countries. It's also war with nature and war between political parties and ideological war between individuals and even between friends and family members. So there's been this increasing wave of polarization, and almost everyone has made up their minds already and has a very fixed and rigid idea of what's really going on in the world. And so it's actually hard to even have a discussion about any of this without getting into an argument. And so that's also war energy. You know, that's the war energy within us. And so I invite you, if you're feeling that at all, maybe you're not, but if you are, that's where we can do some self-inquiry and look at the war energy within us. Where and how and with whom are we at war? And to do some self-inquiry work around that. And we're going to talk about that later. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So I'll explain more about that later if you're not familiar with what I'm saying. So overall, I think it's important to recognize that this war energy brings up fear in probably all of us. And there's more than fear, you know, anger, sadness, all kinds of other emotions. But for the purposes of our call right now, let's just talk about fear for a moment, because fear underlies these other emotions. And so fear there's like a baseline of fear that we're dealing with. And the fear is being stoked. The fear is especially being stoked by the legacy media. And we're literally being invited into fear throughout the day, every day, And I wonder if you've noticed that. And it's not just fear of World War III and nukes, but it's also about pointing the finger at the other side, and saying, you must fear them because, fill in the blank, put anything in there you want. And then they will tell you why you need to be afraid of the other side. And I'm not saying that some of the accusations aren't legitimate, at least maybe partially legitimate. Some of them are, but many of them are not. A lot of it is just stirring up polarization and fear and anger at the other side. And so here's where witnessing and processing self-inquiry come in handy for us. And this is what the forces of separation are really good at. They are masterful at inviting us into fear and polarization for all kinds of, seemingly valid reasons. And if we buy into it, we're contributing to the problem. We're not helping resolve it. Fear is a very, very low vibration. And we need to maintain a high vibration more than anything right now. So it's important not to buy into fear. The kind of fear that I'm talking about is not the helpful kind of fear. Fear is only helpful when we're in a life-threatening situation, like if you see a snake, and then fear comes up, adrenaline kicks in, and it allows you to jump aside. And that's what fear is designed to help us with. But the human body and our nervous systems are not built to experience long-term fear and to carry fear and worry around with us all the time. That wreaks havoc on the nervous system, and it gives us PTSD. In case you don't know, PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. I thought everybody knew what that was, but I've found recently some people don't. So I wanted to tell you a little story. I remember back in the 1990s. It was before the term PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, was in use much. And there was this one day where Leslie asked me if I knew what PTSD meant. And it was funny because I had just read an article the previous, couple of weeks, that it was about it. And it said that PTSD applied to soldiers who were returning from war. And it was about all the anxiety and physical traumas that they experienced. And I asked Leslie, well, why are you asking? And she said she had never heard of the term PTSD before, but her inner spiritual guides had just told her that everyone on the planet was suffering from some degree of PTSD. And she didn't even know what it meant. I mean, and I'm laughing, but it's not really that funny. I think that, this is a good reminder that the state of our world for several generations now has been a state of almost continuous war. And so we're all traumatized by that. And I remember Leslie and I, at the time, we discussed the situation at length, and it seemed like her guides were giving us really important information. We had been reading books about the patriarchal era of the last 6,000 years or so, and how it's been an age characterized by war. And we also learned from those books that the previous era, the Neolithic era, was a more peaceful time. Archaeological evidence shows that there was a widespread civilization all across Europe and across much of the world, in fact, where no major fortifications were found, no proliferation of weapons. The archaeology and anthropology shows that it was a fairly peaceful time. And art reflected that as well. There was this thing called the beatific smile that just you could see how happy people were being depicted to be. And it was a time, the Neolithic era, when they worshipped the great Earth Mother Goddess. And it was a time when there was more of a balance between the masculine and feminine energies. And then over, it was like a period of about 2,000 years, I think, there were tribes, people from the north in the colder areas in a place, what is now called the Russian steppes. And so these invaders came down and they conquered the Neolithic tribes, and they were patriarchal tribes people. They worshipped a sky god and they were warlike. They had horses, they had iron weapons, and so the peaceful Neolithic people were no match for them. And so they were easily conquered. It took a long time because it happened in waves, But that was the turning of the previous age from the Neolithic to the patriarchal. And we've been in this patriarchal age for the past 6,000 years or so. And now we're at the turning of another age. We're transitioning from the age of patriarchy, or some people call it the age of separation. But whatever you want to call it, we're transitioning into what we like to call the new paradigm of the heart. And the simplest way to look at it is that we're moving out of an era based in the love of power and moving into an era based in the power of love. So because of this transition that we're in, the forces of separation and darkness, you could call them, are fighting for their lives. They are stopping at nothing to hold on to power and control. But I think it's important for all of us to remember that this is going to be a losing battle for them, because there's this tidal wave of energy moving with the forces of light and connection. And anybody who stands in the way of it is going to get pummeled and swept away by it. And it is humanity's destiny to evolve into the new paradigm of the heart. And we're the midwives. We're the midwives for the birth of this new paradigm of the heart. It's just that right now it doesn't necessarily look like it, because, like I said, the wave is energetic and it hasn't become fully physical yet. But it is what's happening energetically under the surface. So if you look at what's happening in the world superficially, and especially if you take in the legacy media, sometimes it just looks like all is lost. And it's scary. And so that the fear is one of the main tools of the forces of separation. They use it to keep us feeling powerless and helpless and like victims. And when we're in fear, we're more easily controlled and manipulated. And so I think it's important to name this. I would imagine most of you already know this, but to just name it and, put it out here on the table so we can all look at it. And we need to do our part to transcend the fear that might arise from time to time as we go through these changes. And how do we do that? We talked a little bit about clearing fear in the July spiritual weather report, but since that energy is still up for us, the fear energy, I thought it would be good to talk about it briefly today, to talk about a few ways of releasing fear and not buying into the fear. So that's our next topic for today, the fear clearing practices. So the very first thing is to practice witnessing fear. And the first step in that process is just recognizing the fear and naming it. You say to yourself inwardly, I'm feeling fear passing through me right now. And then you practice feeling it and witnessing it and letting it go. And you don't act on it, you don't buy into it, and you remember as much as you possibly can that fear is just a frequency. It's just a vibration, and it's passing through you in the moment, and this too shall pass. So, for example, if you're hearing some legacy media outlet say, be very afraid of fill in the blank, that political candidate or that political party or that foreign leader because of whatever, that's when you stop and you get into your witness mode as much as you possibly can. You say, this is an invitation into fear, and I'm not going to go there. Or you say something like, I'm feeling fear passing through me, and I'm releasing it and letting it go. Or, I'm feeling fear. It's not who I am. I'm pure awareness. I am the soul. I'm pure love. This too shall pass. So again, I'm not saying that some of what's happening in the world is not a reason for fear. Some of it is, but a lot of it is just about manipulation and control. So regardless, it's always important to witness the fear and let it go. That's the first thing. The second thing, which is one of the simplest and easiest ways of dealing with fear, is to use a mantra. And the mantra that Leslie talked about long, long ago, which I still use every day, is I choose love. So when fear arises, you just say inwardly to yourself, I choose love. And it works really well. It's like an antidote to fear. And when you say, I choose love, if you like, you can also focus on moving your energy into your heart center and feeling the vibration of love in your heart center. And you can let that love energy in your heart center expand, and you can let it move through your body. And even if you can't feel love in that moment and all you're feeling is the fear, it still works to say, I choose love. It works anyway, because that's how we begin to live less in fear and more in love, and it kicks the witness into gear as well. So it's a great practice to use that mantra throughout the day. Another really good practice for clearing fear is to do squares. Because when you can name a fear, that's one corner of a square. And if you can just name the one corner of a square, then it's easy to flesh out the other three corners if you know how to do squares. If you're new to Core Light and you're not familiar with squares, it's a simple journaling practice that Leslie's guides gave her long ago, and we wrote a chapter about it in the Marriage of Spirit book, The Marriage of Spirit. And it's available on our website at corelight.org, or it's on Amazon or any other bookseller. And if you feel like you need more support, if this interests you and you want more support with clearing fear, there are several fear-clearing practices in a course that I taught called The New Paradigm of the Heart, Transcending Victim-Tyrant Consciousness, and that's also available at corelight.org on our courses page. And then the last thing here, before we move on, I recorded some new fear-clearing guided meditations, which are going to be part of our upcoming course, The 7 Portals of Spiritual Awakening. And as I said before, we hope to launch that soon. So I hope all that's helpful. And there's so much more we could say, but let's move on for the sake of time to the next topic, which is freedom is at stake. How's your witness? How are you witnessing all of this stuff I'm bringing up today? I hope it's strong. So, like I've spoken about many times on the Spiritual Weather Report calls, one of the main reasons that our souls incarnate is to experience freedom. We come to Earth to express our soul purpose freely, to create freely, to speak freely, to think freely. And so, freedom of speech, freedom of thought, all our freedoms are the physical reflection of the soul's purpose. Freedom is a fundamental right of being human. It's not a privilege. It's what we come in to experience. And so I think one of the reasons this topic of freedom being at stake came up is because we just had the anniversary of 9/11. And the energy of 9/11 is very much with us, and it's still affecting us. And in fact, it's affecting us more and more with each passing year. And so I wanted to tell you the story of what Leslie and I experienced on September 11th, 2001. I know I've told the story once or twice before, but it just feels very important to share it again right now. So if you've heard it before, I hope you don't mind the reminder. So we were in Berkeley, California, the weekend before 9/11. 9/11 was a Tuesday, and we were leading a 3-day weekend event in Berkeley, September 8th through 10th, Saturday through Monday, 2001. And one of the only times I ever remember Leslie having a very bad sore throat and being almost unable to talk at the event was on the 10th, Monday the 10th, the day before 9/11. And through this croaking, clenching throat, she said, "Can't you see? They're trying to take away your freedoms." And I look back at that and I think, oh my goodness. I mean, it was so amazing that she said that on the day before 9/11. And so on Tuesday morning, 9/11, we were packed and ready to be picked up by our ride to go to the airport to fly back home to New Mexico. And we got a call from the ride saying, have you watched the TV this morning? You're not going anywhere. And so we turned on the TV and we watched what was happening on 9/11. And within the first, 15 seconds of watching what was happening, independently of each other, we both got this inner message and we said it out loud to each other. And the inner message from the spiritual guides was, it's an inside job. We didn't know what that meant. I can't prove anything. I don't know anything. All I know is that that's what we were told. And within a few years, we read a book called The Shock Doctrine. I don't know if you've ever read that, by Naomi Klein. It's a very well-researched book that details example after example after example over several decades of how the powers that be, or I suppose you could call them the forces of separation, use shocking events, shattering events, to take more control and to restrict freedoms all over the world. And so with 9/11, I mean, like I said, I don't claim to know what happened and why our guides would say to us, what they told us, that it's an inside job. I mean, I don't know what would warrant that. But what is undeniable is that the shock of that event, it put the collective into a state of trauma and shock. And that was used to help get the Patriot Act passed, which was a huge restriction of freedoms. And it was really like a giant step forward in ushering in what's called the surveillance state in a much bigger way than ever before. And so that's something that, can't really be argued. That's just what's happened. So I guess I reflect on Leslie's words the day before 9/11 from time to time, and I just think how prescient they were. And we didn't know. We didn't really know. Honestly, I thought she was paranoid. I thought, she grew up in South Africa under apartheid, and they had this, the special branch following people around, spying on people. You couldn't protest. You couldn't speak out for peace. You couldn't speak out against apartheid. And she grew up in that world, so that's how she sees the world. But that was naive of me. It was naive on my part because as an enlightened being, she had cleared all that stuff. And so this was more pure awareness coming through her. Her guides were speaking to her. And so I see that now in retrospect. But I guess now, 23 years later, after 9/11, the curtailing of our freedoms has progressed even more. And it's to the point where now we've got this thing that's called the censorship industrial complex. I mean, I don't know if you've heard that term, but I think it's important to know about. The U.S. founding fathers made freedom of speech, the First Amendment of the Constitution, because it's the most important one. And all the other amendments and all the other freedoms hinge on that one, freedom of speech. So if we don't have free speech, and if a government can censor those who don't agree with it, then we don't have a democracy, and we don't have any other of our other constitutional rights. So censorship is something we all need to focus on and not allow to continue. And I have to say, even if some part of us might feel a little bit happy that somebody we disagree with got censored, we need to put the shoe on the other foot. I mean, how would we feel if we got censored because somebody didn't agree with us? So, that's a two-way street. And just for a moment to speak to my American brothers and sisters, it's critical to remember that being an American means that we have the right of free speech. It's not a privilege, it's a right. And as I said, it's the very First Amendment in the Constitution. We're one of the only countries, maybe the only country, I can't remember, but for whom that's true. So it doesn't matter if somebody disagrees with us or not. We still have the right to say whatever we want and to think whatever we want. And we all have the right to disagree with what somebody says or to not listen to what they're saying. But everybody has the right to say what they want to say. So if there's a person who's been censored, I think it's really important to look at who it is that's doing the censoring and why they're doing the censoring. What's the real reason for the censoring? Throughout all of history, the people doing the censoring have never been the good guys. So if somebody is telling us that they're censoring in order to protect us, from hate speech or disinformation or, because they want to keep us safe, I think their motives need to be questioned very carefully, because there's usually another reason, and it usually involves money and power and control. And so I know this is uncomfortable, and I apologize, but we're in this pivotal moment in our human evolution, and it's super important to start a dialogue about this stuff, right? Like when and how and if certain kinds of speech should be limited. But in general, if there's a subject that's controversial, more speech is what's needed, not less. So censorship is not really the answer. More dialogue is the answer. And also, once you appoint an authority, any authority, to be in charge of the censoring, then it's a very slippery slope, because then suddenly somebody or some organization, like government, for example, has been given the authority to decide what we can and cannot hear. And that means that we're living in a closed information society, and the only messaging we hear is what somebody else has approved. And when that happens, we no longer have free choice. We don't have democratic voting. We don't have freedom of speech. I mean, even freedom of thought is gone, because we're being fed a partial picture by those who are in the position of authority. So it might look like we're living in a democracy and that we have freedom, but it's an illusion, because we've been banned from hearing all the sides. So this is the slow march towards totalitarianism that the U.S. and the whole world has been on for a while. And I've mentioned this before, and I don't want to go on about it. I think that's enough. But let me say, if the forces of separation are successful at dividing us against each other and censoring, and if we buy into these constant invitations to fear the other side and to get angry at the other side, then we're too preoccupied to look at who's orchestrating the antagonism. And then the man behind the curtain who's pulling the levers wins. So the highest spiritual path that we can all take right now is to not feed the vitriol. Don't focus on the cultural issues that divide us, but rather look to what we have in common. So, for example, I've got a little list here. Things like, we all want a peaceful planet. We all love our children. We all love nature. We all want to prosper and be healthy and happy. We all want to be free to express ourselves and to live our soul's highest purpose. And when we focus on this world that we want to create and we stop polarizing with each other, then the new paradigm of the heart will manifest much faster. And that's a process that begins inside each one of us. All right, so to complete on this subject of being free, just a few last things I want to say. One is that it's important to remember that we all have the freedom to direct our energy wherever we want to direct it. So instead of directing it at polarizing with other people and being afraid of all the scary things that are happening in the world, the highest use of our freedom is to develop our relationship with Spirit. And that can look like so many different things. I mean, it can include, doing the inner clearing work, the self-inquiry work, or it might be focusing on the things that bring you joy. And that's the beauty of having the freedom to direct our energy wherever we want to. We can choose what feels right to us in any given moment. Okay, let's move on. The next topic is practices to preserve freedom. And so the feeling I'm getting is that all over the world, freedom is one of the most important issues of our times, at least at a physical, practical level. So no matter what country you live in, we can each make freedom a special focus for the next while. And I invite you to do that, maybe between now and the next month's weather report. Ask, what can you do to protect and preserve freedom? And I did this myself. I made a list of a few things to share with you. You probably are going to have your own ideas and you can make your own list, but this is a start just in case it's helpful. What can I do to protect and preserve freedom? Number one, at a very mundane, practical level, take time to get informed. Do some research about who's restricting our freedoms and why. Who's doing the censoring and why. And don't take it at face value. Dig deeper and look at the underlying motivations, which usually have to do with money and power and control. Knowledge is power. So knowing what's going on is very important at a 3D physical level. Number two, do a square on free speech versus censorship. We did one on the Spiritual Weather Report in April of 2023, a year and a half ago. So if you need a little support with doing that square, you can listen to the April 2023 recording. It is on corelight.org's free resources page, and there's a timestamp that tells you when the square begins. It was the very last part of the call before the questions and answers. It was powerful. I remember feeling a huge shift from that square. So if you by any chance didn't hear that, or you want to go back and re-listen, I do recommend it. And it was just, all I did was sort of the beginning of the square. So I left it so everybody could flesh it out on their own if they wanted to. Number three, write in a gratitude journal about all your freedoms and your gratitude for them. Number four, journal about what your soul's highest purpose is. And address these three questions. Number one, how would having total freedom to pursue your soul's highest purpose make you feel? Number two, how would not having freedom to pursue it make you feel? Number three, what, if anything, restricts your freedom in the world, and what can you do to gain more freedom? Okay, there's just two more. Let's see, number 5. Pray and ask to be shown how to live your freedom to the fullest. The last one, number 6. Pray and ask what you can do to protect and preserve freedom in the world. All right. Well, it's time to move on to the Q&A portion of our call. But before we do, let me just conclude. I just want to try to wrap up a little bit here, since this has been a big topic and unusual to go down into the shadow in this way. So I know it might have been an especially intense discussion, and I'm sorry if it was challenging for you, but I got such clear guidance that I needed to talk about that today. So I guess my question to you is, how is your witnessing practice? How are you doing with your witnessing right now? I hope you're feeling strong in your witness. I mean, we really went down into the shadow part of the 3D physical world, and you know, that's so important to do if we're going to be midwives for the new paradigm of the heart. If we're going to live in love and compassion and heart-centeredness, we need to clear out that stuff. We need to transmute the shadow. It's a metaphysical truth. We can only go as high as we're willing to go low. And so it's important to shine a light on the shadows in the basement and to name what's really going on below the surface appearance, so that we can ascend to the heights, live from the heart, you know, have our enlightenment. So, like we talked about at the very beginning of the call, I invite you to remember that even though the world may seem very intense and challenging at times, at one level, it's only a movie. This is a temporary dance of light and dark that we're witnessing. Right? It's a shadow play. And that's the eternal dance of the yin and the yang, you know. It's that beautiful Taoist symbol of the white swirl and the black swirl that seem to be moving and are always spinning and dancing around each other. And as souls, when we incarnate into these human bodies, we experience the fear that the dark side might win. And, you know, the dark side might take over completely. And, you know, it's like, it's the fun of having a human experience on planet Earth in a physical body, you know. I mean, it's that big unknown. Will the dark side take over? Will the dark side win? It's what all the movies are about. It's why we go on roller coaster rides. You know, there's a thrill in that. But if you know the truth, that it's always a dance of dark and light and yin and yang, then there's never anything to worry about. So I think the invitation for all of us right now is to practice witnessing more than ever before, to practice self-inquiry more than ever before, and to remember that this is just a movie. You know, it's a great big FGO that is supporting our soul's evolution. And so as much as we possibly can, we need to relax and sit back and watch the movie unfold however it's going to, and just enjoy the popcorn as much as we possibly can. So that's been I've used that little mantra when it seems especially intense. I just say, time to enjoy the popcorn. So anyway, I hope all that is helpful. And now it is time to move on to questions and answers. So I want to thank you all very much for all the questions that you send in, all the heartfelt sharing. I really appreciate hearing from you. It helps me enormously, as I've said before. And in case you're new, the way it works is you can email your questions in advance to courses@corelight.org. It's not possible for me to answer all the questions, but I do read them all, and I do get to as many of them as I can. And if your question doesn't get answered by me, an answer always comes from somewhere, whether it's in a dream or from another teacher or a book, or, you have an insight in meditation, but somehow somewhere the answer is going to come to you. Okay, the first question is from Mark. As we approach the U.S. presidential elections, I'm finding it more and more challenging to maintain a heart-centered perspective. Most people I know prefer to want their opinions validated and to keep demonizing the other side. Everything is so polarized, there just seems to be no room for real discussion. So my question is, how can I best practice holding the middle way for both myself and others, especially during these next few months? Any insights would be greatly appreciated. Well, thanks for your great question, Mark. I think you asked this question for many of us. I know plenty of people who've been struggling with this, including myself. I mean, it is difficult to have political discussions nowadays, isn't it? Unless you know the person agrees with you in advance, right? I mean, the poles are so far apart, and it just seems like everybody's made up their minds that they're right, and so there's not any room for discussion. Most people I know are just not discussing things. That's one solution. And, to me, there's something really sad about that when we stop talking to each other. So I think we've been given the best opportunity ever to practice all the spiritual teachings that we've ever learned. And as I keep saying, the first one above all is to practice witnessing. Like we've already talked about it today, and I know I talk about it on almost every month on the spiritual weather reports, and it's because it's just such a foundational practice. It's about practicing things like non-judgment, non-attachment, balance, surrender. All these higher qualities of the heart. And I know when I speak with anybody about politics, which honestly, it's very, very rare these days. I mean, I just practice witnessing and choosing love, and I listen a lot. That's something important. I think listening a lot is critical. Most people just want to be heard anyway. I mean, most people don't really care, or let's say they don't really want to know what you think, because they've already made up their own minds. And like you said, they want their opinions to be validated. But I think any time that we listen to somebody, no matter what it's about, it's such a great gift we give them. Giving our time and our attention is a great gift and an honoring of another person. We don't have to validate their opinion or agree with them. But listening is a way of really honoring somebody. And if their opinions are triggering you, then it's a great opportunity to do our spiritual practices, right? I mean, like I've been saying, it's the great opportunity for witnessing and so forth. So usually I'll talk about politics nowadays only if it's with somebody who I know has an open mind. If I know that they're willing to listen and that they're really interested in having a discussion and sharing ideas. I mean, it can actually be fun and illuminating if that happens. It's rare, but it happens sometimes. So one of the things that helps me to hold a middle way in any discussion is to remember that both sides, the left and the right, are actively being fed by the legacy media opposite information. There's one set of facts, but they're two opposite spins that are purposefully designed to divide us and polarize us. And if you take in only one side, you think the other side is just nuts, right? For believing what they believe. I mean, and you'd be right to think that based on what you've been told, because it's intended to make you think that they're insane. They're a bunch of kooks. They're nut jobs, and it can make you angry with them and afraid of the other side, like we've been talking about today. And this is true in most countries out around the world, not just in the U.S. So I feel really grateful for a discovery that I made many years ago. It was when I started spending more time with my parents. And my parents are they're much more right-leaning, more conservative. So when I go to their house, they've got Fox News on all the time. And when I'm at their house, I get to hear that side of things. And before that, I rarely ever heard that side of things because for most of my life, I was left-leaning, and because most of my friends were left-leaning. And I took in only the left-leaning news. And in fact, one of my left-leaning friends has this daily news digest that she still sends me every day. And so I still get to know what's happening with those other news sources. And so because I now make it a point to get exposed to both sides, the left and the right, I see that there's this sort of, the word that's coming to mind is diabolical. I don't know if that's appropriate, but it's like there's this sort of diabolical way that the legacy media divides the two sides into these two increasingly polarized camps. And if you're not aware of this, it's easy to see how you could quickly learn to be angry with and even hate the other side, and think they are absolutely out of their minds. And we can be forgiven for concluding that all of this is deliberate, right? That the forces of separation are controlling both sides of the legacy media and purposely spinning the facts to keep us all fighting with each other. I mean, I can't prove that, but if you just logically think about it, if you consider that both sides are corporate controlled, and that ultimately there are only 3 companies that own all the other companies, then like I said, one could be forgiven for assuming that it might be true that there's a deliberate effort to polarize the population. And so for many years, I've made this a spiritual practice to witness both sides of the so-called news, and to practice neither believing nor disbelieving, just letting the information be there, not doing anything with it, and then using my own discernment to feel into what resonates as true and not true. And that has been just such an incredibly powerful and liberating practice. I highly, highly recommend that you give it a try. It will really test your witnessing skills, I promise you. I mean, it's like, because it's crazy making, but it is a great test of our spiritual skills, especially witnessing. So by practicing this, I've found that the truth usually lies somewhere in the middle. It's that old metaphor of seeing the million shades of gray between the black and the white. very, very rarely is anything completely black or white. And in fact, if you look at that Taoist yin-yang symbol, neither the black swirl nor the white swirl is completely black or white. There's a little dot in the center of the black swirl that's white, and a little black dot in the white swirl. And the symbolism of that is that nothing is completely one-sided. Everything contains the seed of its opposite within it. So this practice of searching for the truth in the way that I've been describing, it helps me to find the nuances, to find the subtlety, and to keep an open mind about things. And what's really interesting, and actually something I find hopeful, is that I'm discovering that there are other people waking up to this way of thinking too. I thought I was the only one. Hopefully a lot of you too are with me in this. But there are even journalists who used to be mainstream, who used to consider themselves either left or right or whatever, but who no longer identify that way because they discovered this manipulation that I'm talking about. The left side or the right side actually kicked them out of the corporation because they started thinking for themselves and they stopped towing the party line, so to speak. It was like they became whistleblowers in a way, and they made a very loud declaration to the world that they weren't going to play that game anymore. And so now some of these independent journalists are not obligated to report what they're told, but they can report what they've discovered in their own searching for truth. And I think most people, like I said, are discovering that the truth lies somewhere in the middle, in the gray zone. And I don't always agree with these people I'm talking about. I still think for myself, but at least it is so inspiring that they're actually searching for the truth. They're not just repeating some, tired old propaganda that's been handed to them on a cue card or something. And another thing that I want to say about this phenomenon, which I find very exciting and inspiring, is that several of these people in journalism who used to identify as either left or right, they've started to come together and to find their common ground. That makes me get all choked up, sorry. But what this means to me is that this is the unification of opposites. I never thought I would see that in my lifetime. But it's what the Core Light teachings are all about. It's about finding the middle way. So this left and right coming together, I think it's a huge sign. I think it's a sign that there's significant change happening, and it's a manifestation in the physical world of unity consciousness that's just starting to birth. I mean, I still think we're quite a long way from having that, become more prevalent, but I get super excited about it. So, Mark, I want to thank you again. I'm really grateful that you asked how you can hold the middle way, because I haven't met many people who even want to do that. So to complete with your question, I would like to just recap a little bit. I made a list of some of the practices that I mentioned, and I think it would be helpful just to read them out loud. So it's 5 things. Number 1 is witnessing. And witnessing includes 4 main things: non-judgment, non-attachment, surrender, and balance. The second thing on the list is practicing neither believing nor disbelieving. Number 3, keeping an open mind. Number 4, listening a lot. And the 5th one and the last one, I would add, I didn't say this before, but I would also add having compassion for people. Because the truth is that we've all been caught up in this manipulation. So I feel like I can't blame anybody for thinking the way they do and for fearing the other side and for being angry with the other side and so on and so on. I like just remembering that helps me to let go of any judgment, to not polarize, to just have compassion and forgive people. And that's a huge step, I think, in holding the middle way. Okay, I hope all that has helped, and I hope it hasn't stirred up too much stuff for anybody. Like I said at the beginning of the call, this is a minefield that we're walking through together. So I hope that you can have some compassion and forgiveness for me. I'm doing my best to be honest and transparent with you, and I guess I'm realizing that I'm feeling vulnerable, because I feel like I'm taking a risk here. So I ask for your compassion and forgiveness, please. Anyway, like I said, I hope this has been helpful, and thank you again, Mark, for that really important question. The next question is from Karen. In terms of the world being our mirror, please help me understand this in light of how Black Americans are treated here. It looks like, quote unquote, just being Black brings so much negativity directed at them. Well, thank you for your excellent question, Karen. Yeah, it is, like you say, it's a metaphysical truth that the world is our mirror. Our outer reality is a reflection of our own unconscious. So my understanding of your question is that you're asking, how do you interpret something like racism or prejudice or maybe any kind of unfair treatment, especially of Black people, as a mirror of what's inside you? And that's such a good question. So the way I work with this is first by looking at what is racism, what is prejudice, what is unfair treatment of any kind. If you take a step back and you look at these things from a bigger perspective, what do you see? What are they made of? What is the underpinning of those things? So instead of telling you what I see, I'm going to be quiet for a moment, just pause, and I'm going to let everybody feel into it for a moment. What do you see about the underpinnings of racism and prejudice and unfair treatment of any kind? Well, I would say that overall, all of these things are based in victim-tyrant consciousness. So any kind of unfairness, whether it's racism or misogyny or homophobia or any kind of oppression, it's based in victim-tyrant consciousness. And victim-tyrant consciousness is the number one issue that the entire world is working on. Whether we know it or not, it's like the water that the fish swims in. We're swimming in victim-tyrant consciousness. It's the primary knot in consciousness that humanity is here to unravel. So healing this issue is humanity's next evolutionary step. So in terms of your question about how to see racism as a mirror, you would want to do some self-examination and look at any place where you might hold victim-tyrant consciousness inside you. You would ask yourself, things like, do you feel victimized in any way? How do you feel victimized? What does that look like for you? What happens to you when you feel that? Really look at any place where you get triggered by unfairness. So just to make this practical, I can tell you personally that unfairness was always my biggest trigger. I mean, Before I learned how to do the work of self-inquiry that we teach at Corelight, when I felt treated unfairly or when I saw others being treated unfairly, I would go into a huge reaction. I mean, it pressed all my buttons. I would say that was my core issue for most of my life until in my 20s, I started learning this work. But by doing those self-inquiry practices, I cleared all that stuff away. And so now I don't go into those extreme reactions anymore. I mean, I may still have, the example I gave earlier is like there may be a moment where I just get shocked and shattered by witnessing something, but I'm pretty quick at bringing that witness back. And I attribute that to doing the self-inquiry work and practicing witnessing. So when you can find that victim tyrant consciousness inside you and process that and do the whatever kind of work you do on that, when you find that mirror inside you, that's when I recommend that you use any method of self-inquiry that works for you and you practice that. So the practices that we offer at Corelight are outlined in the Marriage of Spirit book. They're simple, very powerful journaling exercises, and you can try those. I don't know, Karen, if you've already been using those or not, but you can try them to see if they work for you. And just know that there are many, many other practices out there nowadays. Many teachers, many methods. You don't have to use ours, but it's really important that you do find something that works for you and you use that. This is why we're here. This is what this path is about, is to clear all that stuff away. And really, there is so much more I could say about this topic. It's something that's super, super important. You've asked a really brilliant question, but it's huge. And so I think for the sake of time, I'll move on. But I would say if you want more on this subject, if this subject is of interest to you and you want to go deeper, I taught an entire course on it, and it's called The New Paradigm of the Heart, Transcending Victim Tyrant Consciousness. And it's available at corelight.org on our courses page. And it goes into a lot of the stuff much more deeply, especially about mirroring. What is the mirroring practice and how does it work? I've given you a quick example right now, just to, kind of give you a little taste of it. But if you want to know more, I would suggest taking that course. So I hope that's, and doing the Marriage of Spirit processing. So if you're not ready for a whole course, you can just get that book, The Marriage of Spirit, and start working. There's a chapter in the book on judgment and mirrors, and it gives lots of examples and practices as well. So I hope that's helpful, and thank you again for your great question, Karen. Okay, this is the last question for today. It's from Aisha. She says, I find myself face to face with my wounds, old triggers, and reactions, pretty much all ego-based. Other than just observing, recognizing, and naming, what else can I do? I don't want to be stuck here. It's a painful place to be. Thank you. Well, thank you for your question, Aisha, and I'm very sorry to hear that you're struggling. I can feel that pain, that painful place that you're in, and you have my compassion and my love, and I'll keep you in my prayers. So I guess the way I would respond is first to say that in case it's helpful, do you realize that you're not alone? There are so many people who are having major issues arise and are having to face a lot of old egoic baggage. It's like many of us we're getting the greatest FGOs at the moment. And some of it feels like, we've done it before. Why is it happening again? What is this? But the way that works metaphysically is it's like peeling the layers of an onion, and when you do a piece of egoic clearing work, you peel a whole bunch of layers of the onion. And sometimes if it's a process that we call a vertical process, a horizontal process, you peel them away and they're done, and you never have to revisit it again. You're finished with that layer. Those are more superficial processes. But there are these vertical processes, like core processes. They go straight down to the core of the onion. So, 1 year you might do a process and peel a whole bunch of layers, and then 10 years later, you find the same process comes up and you think you dealt with it, but there's another set of layers. And it's because those vertical processes go all the way through the onion from the outer edge all the way to the core. And so as you're peeling away your onion and getting down to your core, you find sometimes things repeat. And that's by design. So things like victim-tyrant consciousness, for example, that's a core issue. That's a vertical issue that goes all the way through the onion. I would say also, in addition to practicing witnessing, which you said you're practicing observing, and that's the same thing. The objective observer is the witness. I would say it's also helpful to remember a couple things. One is that you can use mantras like, "This too shall pass." You can say things like, "I'm not this pain. I'm not my emotions. I'm pure awareness. I'm pure consciousness. I'm pure love. The pain is just passing through." That helps a lot. I find that helps me enormously. It's simple. You don't have to get into deep processing with that. You just make that a mantra throughout the day. But the main thing, I would say this is number 2. The main thing, the most productive thing you can do to help the pain move through faster is some form of self-inquiry practice, like I just mentioned. The practices that we offer in the Marriage of Spirit book are one way. And I wonder, have you tried those, Aisha? Have you tried the Marriage of Spirit processing methods? They're simple journaling techniques. They're deceptively simple because they're so powerful. There are many methods of self-inquiry out there. You just need to find one that works for you and do that, as I said. But it's critical that you do something, whatever you choose, whether it's the Marriage of Spirit or something else. So as painful as it is to go through a very challenging time like this, it truly is the best opportunity right now for our personal growth and for our soul's evolution. And just to remember that as you do the work of self-inquiry, you're healing old wounds that are usually ancestral traumas that are passed down through the generations, or they're collective traumas that we're all working on. So for example, I know plenty of women who are working on collective feminine archetypal stuff. It's been 6,000 years of patriarchy. So there's all kinds of women who are getting down to core issues around being a woman in this lifetime, wearing the clothes of a woman. You're not a woman, you're a soul. We put on a male or a female body, but it's important to remember, this is not really about you personally. It's just that as souls, we volunteered to incarnate here on planet Earth and help with this healing process for humanity. So it's about our personal soul growth as well as our gift to the earth and to humanity. So it's helpful to remember that the greatest gift that you can give the world is your own awakening, doing your own healing work. And it's like Core Light's tagline is change the world by changing yourself. And I think, that kind of says it all, that's the greatest gift we can give, is working on ourselves, changing ourselves, and offering. That's a gift that goes out by osmosis to the whole world. It's like throwing a pebble in a pond and the ripples just go out. And you don't know what kind of effect you're going to have on the rest of the world. But I can tell you, you do have an effect. So I hope that offers a little bit of encouragement. I wish you stamina and courage in facing these issues. And that's not just for you, Aisha, that's for everybody. Okay, I hope that's helpful. Thank you for your question. And I think it's time to wrap up for the day. So I invite you to pause for a couple of minutes, to just sit in a chair or lie down, just get comfortable while we have our final prayer and meditation to wrap up for the day. Okay, so I invite you to take a few long, slow, deep breaths. Breathing in all the light and the life force that surrounds you. Breathing out anything that might have gotten stirred up by our call today. Breathing in love. Breathing out shadow. Breathing in joy. Breathing out all the negativity. Breathing in peace. Breathing out the consciousness of war. So I invite you to continue to do some long, slow, deep breathing while I speak. I invite you, while you breathe, to put your attention in your heart center. You can even tap the center of your chest with your finger if that helps you to find your heart center. But let's all bring our attention into the heart center right now, right in the middle of the chest. Not where the physical heart resides, which is to one side, but right in the middle, where the heart chakra is. And now I invite you to breathe light in through the top of your head, down into your heart center. Feel the love, and then with an exhale, breathe the love down your core and out your root chakra into the earth. Sending your love into the earth. And then on the next inhale, inhale the earth energy up from beneath you, up into the root and up into the heart. And then add your love to your breath and send your breath with the exhale out the top of your head, out the crown, into the celestial realms, connecting with spirit. And let's do that a few times. The first breath we call the celestial breath. Breathing light and love and energy in through the top of your head, into your heart, adding your love, and breathing it down into the earth. And on that breath, you can say a little mantra if you like. You can say, I breathe my love of spirit into the earth. And then on the next breath, it's the opposite. You breathe earth energy up into your heart. Add your love and then breathe it out with the exhale out the top of your head. And you can use a little mantra with that breath as well. You can say, I breathe my love of earth out into spirit. And let's do that breath a few more times. Breathing your love of spirit in through the top of your head, into your heart, adding your love and breathing it out into the earth. I breathe my love of spirit into the earth. And then Opposite, you breathe earth energy up into your root and up to your heart. You add your love, breathing it out to the crown, into the celestial realms, saying, I breathe my love of earth out into spirit. I'm going to be quiet for a few moments while you do that. The most important thing is to add your love. Make sure you feel the love in your heart and add it to the breath, sending your love out. Sometimes it puts a smile on your face to feel that love. And there's one last breath, a third breath. And this is the celestial terrestrial breath, and it's where simultaneously you breathe light into the top of your head from the celestial realms, into your heart, and simultaneously breathing earth energy up into your heart with the terrestrial breath at the same time. And then with the exhale, you add your love and you breathe the love out in all directions like an ever-expanding sphere. Starts in your heart and expands out and out and out. And the mantra with that breath is you can say, I breathe my love of earth and spirit out in all directions. And then you can do all three breaths together. You do the celestial breath once, the terrestrial breath once, and then the combination celestial terrestrial breath as a third breath. And then you can repeat that cycle. You can do a series. So I'll let you do that for another moment or two before we close out. Just feeling your love in your heart, expanding out in all directions, blessing all life on this earth and beyond, the whole of the natural world. Feeling your love of spirit and matter, heaven and earth. So while you continue to do that, I'm just going to say a little prayer to close out for today. So, Great Spirit, we offer up the polarities that we named today during the call. We're giving back the imbalances of censorship versus free speech, war versus peace, dark versus light, separation versus connection, the yin and the yang. And we give back all the imbalances, and we ask to be brought into a very strong witness, a very strong heart space, where we can see the dance of light and dark playing out like a movie, and we can enjoy the popcorn. Living in love, living in compassion, living in truth, living in a powerful capacity to discern, living in gratitude, living in joy, living in the trust in ourselves, the trust of the earth, the trust of Great Spirit. Three main aspects of trust. So we invite in grace to do this work for us, to rewire us into this new state of consciousness as we release and let go of the imbalances, knowing that this work will be done for us. We also pray for peace and an end to war on the planet. Please make us instruments of your peace. Wherever there's war, may we sow peace. And we ask for protection and courage and inspiration to all those who are working for universal peace. For the whistleblowers, for the journalists, for all the people in government, positions of power, please bless and protect all those working for universal peace. And we give thanks, knowing that this is so. We send our love and our blessings to the whole of the natural world. And we offer our deep, deep gratitude to Great Spirit for this time that we share together in the field of love, for the heart space, for the community, and for the capacity to live our soul's highest purpose as we walk out into the world, knowing that we're supported in this way. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Alalaho. Isn't it wonderful? Oh. And then when you're ready, I invite you to slowly bring your awareness, your energy back into the room and into your body. And I want to thank you one more time for showing up and participating in the field of love, whether you're with us today in the present moment or listening in the future. We're all together. I also just need to mention that last meditation I did was inspired by Martin Gray at sacredsites.com. That's one of his meditations. I love that meditation. I do it all the time. I hope you enjoyed it as well. So I love you and thank you again, and I'll look forward to hopefully seeing you again in a month. Meanwhile, happy witnessing, strength to you, stay on your surfboards. All my love. Bye for now.